Hello, everybody. Hope you're having a great week so far. Welcome to Women Seeking Wholeness Wednesday, although you may not be listening on Wednesday, but we do launch a new episode every Wednesday and have for over a year and 3 months. This episode is super cool because I do kind of an off-the-cuff sort of sister fashion, like unplugged conversation with my sister Taunia. She and I are actually only 13 months apart. I've never known life without her. We've always been very close, although we will detail in this episode how there was a season where we sort of detached from each other while we went through our own little season of figuring out life and family and who we are. And sometimes the people closest to you, you sort of do that, right? You go through these seasons of like, I need to distance myself from everything and everyone so I can figure me out. And yeah, so we talk about that, but our true passion between the two of us right now is just this whole subject of emancipation and what that really, really means. I mean, I know there's a collective wound around this. We're seeing a lot of uprisings over, old history of people being enslaved. And we're just coming out of the U.S. holiday of the 4th of July, Independence Day. I've been talking a lot about freedom on my last few episodes, actually. And this one, I think we kind of tie it together. How do you know if you're really free? How do you know if you're, the wilderness that you go into and pain you're experiencing and all of the discontent? I mean, how do you know if you're not being deceived? How do you know if you're, on the right quote unquote path for you, that you're lined up with Creator, with your own sovereignty, and that it's full of integrity? How do you know this? So just your own evolution as a soul, how you actually your discomfort and going into that wilderness is actually your ticket to freedom. Oh, and stay tuned because in the coming weeks, I'm going to be talking about my new Feminine Boss School. You heard that right. Feminine Boss School, which is a 12-week immersion kind of crash course into goddess confidence, finding your soulpreneur path, and balancing it all with motherhood. So stay tuned for that on my website. And without further ado, let's bring in my sister, my Irish twin, Taunia Dawn Flora. Hello, my wise sister, Taunia. Oh, okay. So just to give people a little bit of context here around why I'm interviewing my sister again, she and my other sister, Robin, were part of my first couple of episodes that launched this whole podcast in February of 2019. So here we are, revisiting a conversation because a lot has happened during that time. When you say, Taunia, there's just been a lot.
Most definitely.
Since we talked about our family story. And it's interesting because I know everybody has walked through stuff, and I think it renders them an expert in whatever they're here to teach or be. And in our case, definitely we could do a whole other thing on, emotional and mental illness and breaking family patterns and showing up in authenticity and all of that stuff. But I think today you and I are just really aligned, especially as we head into, July 4th. And I think you and I are just really aligned. Maybe, I don't know if it was because of the way we were raised, and we can talk about that later, but we're kind of feisty.
There's a dash of sass in there.
And I don't think that mom knew that she was, our mom is feisty, but she's also like a saint, basically, So she gave us a lot of permission to seek truth. Even though we were raised in a very orthodox religion, which I'll just tell our listeners was Mormonism, there still was a lot of room for us to, I guess, look outside the box a little bit, but yet not. So we can get to that in a minute. But as it relates to freedom, I think everyone is fighting for that right now.
You see all signs of it, right?
The collective is just in a space of don't fence me in, don't label me, don't put me in a box, and I think especially women. So the context of how this arose is that you and I had lunch, a couple weeks back, 2-3 weeks back, I don't even know, because you do coffee talk, and I went to your post-COVID. Well, no, we're not even post-COVID.
We're still there.
Like live thing where we got together with just a bunch of amazing women. And we just talked about, and I loved the topic that you brought forward, which why don't you tell everybody what that was? Because I can't exactly remember the title, but.
Oh my gosh, I have weekly coffee talks, so I'm trying to think what that one was, but I think it has something to do with, go ahead if you remember.
I was just saying, because the George Floyd thing, I mean, it's still in flux, right? But that's when it was first so charged, and all of us had these tender and conflicting feelings around, the rioting and, here we are, a bunch of white women sitting around talking about, like, we don't even know what to do with this and how to make a difference. And so we were all feeling very tender and very vulnerable and, really examining our views around race. So that, but
yeah.
So anyway, you and I went to lunch after that, and it was like, we just started talking about our lives, and it's like, oh, I really need to interview you on my podcast, but I don't know what we're going to talk about. And then it just morphed into, through texting and talking, it just morphed into like, no, it's emancipation. How do we break? And I would love for you to share any parts of your story, because I think you have a very fascinating background in life. And you and I have always been very close, but there was a season where we sort of drifted because you had to find your footing, and, life got busy with me and mothering and other things. I think where we're coming back to now is revisiting this, like, hey, there's this universal need that we are totally awake to, you and I, that the soul needs freedom. The soul needs expression in that freedom. So share anything as we lead up to kind of talking about emancipation. We can delineate that for, our listeners of how we see it and how we came to it. But yeah, maybe just share a couple of highlight reels of why you're feisty about it. Like why it's so up for you and such a value for you.
I've always been an adventurous kind of kid, right? From the beginning. Mm-hmm. But somewhere along the way, when I got into, probably in my 20s especially, I started to lose a sense of who I am and how I wanted to express myself, because I started to be aware of relationships, and that relationships at this stage in my life could turn into marriage. And something in my brain went into, I had to conform in order to enter that stage of life where marriage would be an option. And so I started to compromise on myself, because I thought that's what you did for relationships, and in relationships, the way that I understood them. So I think it started in my 20s, and I it was messy. It was messy around relationships. That's been my biggest life teacher. But in 2011, after my 5th divorce, I finally got into such this place of, oh my gosh, not only can my heart not stand this, but the common denominator is me. No matter who I put in the picture and a finger I want to point and what happened and why the marriage ended, none of that really mattered anymore as much of what in the hell is going on with me. Not to shame myself and not to blame the other partners I had chosen that weren't healthy relationships for me. They were great teachers for me, but not healthy. So in 2011, I think I was in my late 30s or maybe even early 40s, I said, this shit stops now. And I meant it. I meant it.
That was like your line in the sand.
That was my line in the sand. And I put everything on the altar. At that point, my relationship and my concept of God is where I put that on the altar. And when I say everything, I mean everything. I left my home. I left the family. I left my career, and it was thriving. I left and I went to an area I'd never lived before, because that was my do-over. And I didn't have children, so I could do that at that time.
I just want to insert here too that oftentimes people who have a path to maybe be an influencer or a teacher or a way shower, light work or whatever, they have to go through like a wilderness season where it's exactly what you're saying, like who they thought they were or what they thought they wanted. It's just all the dreams crumble, something happens situationally, and then they go into this metaphorical wilderness of not knowing what's next. And you talk about putting everything on the altar. That's exactly what it is. It's like, okay, show me, because I really obviously it's not working for me.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
show me what's next. What do I do? How do yeah.
Pain's a great motivator. I realized I had gotten myself as far as I was, and I kept cycling in a particular pain point of relationship. And with that, I was finally ready to do. I thought I had surrendered to God, the divine at that time. Oh no. Oh no, this was a whole new level. Like you said, this was a wilderness of I'm going somewhere I've never been, which was Oregon. And I went by myself and I left behind religion, family, tribe, anything that said this is who you are and this is the role you play. That was away. And so my journey began. And that's where it started, Cherie. That's where, as you know,
Mhm.
I dropped off the map with the family and everybody so that I could discover who I was. It took about 5 years.
Yeah. Well, there's a great undoing that comes with surrender. And to the outside world, it may look like an avoidance pattern or a shutdown or a shutting out.
Yeah.
Usually it's you've got to tap into your inner reserves and take it's not like you can't put those in a healthy space, like your family and your belief systems and everything. It's not like you can't, hold those sacred somewhere, but to get to the heart of you, to get to what do I know, what do I feel, who am I? And so like you were about what age when all this was?
I
Trying to
would
think
say
of.
my early 40s. I'm
Yeah.
52 now, and I was in my early 40s. Yeah, my early 40s. But you know what, Cherie? The only thing I kept intact when I put everything else behind was my concept of God. It was just that was the only journey. The only person allowed to journey with me was my beloved. And instead of me saying this is what I want and why me, and it got as simple as show me. And every morning it started with show me, and all day long show me. And that was that surrendered place. And I trusted whatever I heard, even if it scared me, even if I had doubts of, is this really God talking to me? The concept of God I had at the time. I just had to just be in that surrender of it's just you and I doing this journey,
Hmm.
and trust where it was leading me.
Yeah. Powerful. I recently went through something very similar. I mean, it looks differently because I couldn't leave everything like, oh, see you later, kids.
You're right, right?
But you know what? There are people who do that. I actually have a different lens I look through now for people who, um, yeah, I just don't, I wouldn't judge that other than like, hey, clean up your mess or whatever. But I get it. Right. So it's almost like it's almost like a trauma response. When you're in a trauma response, which could mean your great undoing, when all your karmic, every issue you have, every emotion, it gets triggered, like you're not thinking with your logic brain. You are in a survival space of trying to put yourself back together. And I talk a lot about the dark night of the soul on this podcast. I've done 2 episodes just specifically about this. Is that what you would say that you
Most
entered?
most definitely, it's a place of great isolation, feeling of aloneness, feeling undone, not feeling knowing if you even belong in the world. It's so dark, it's so dense that I was willing to do anything to get on the other side of it. And for me, the only thing that I thought could probably give me that respite and that gift of knowing myself and feeling free again and wanting to be in the world was the divine. That was it.
Yeah.
That's the only source I ever trusted to go on that journey with me.
I just have to say, let's break that down a little bit. Some people would say, and I'm just playing the devil's advocate protagonist. So, I mean,
Go for it.
Antagonist, I should say. So some people would say, well, like, that's when Satan gets a hold of you. Like, when you leave behind this structure, like, and you're on your own as you and God, like, how do you trust that? Because you're kind of giving voice to that, right? Like, hey, it was dark. It was unknown. It was, a detachment into what was safe and comfortable. It's like some of the programming is stay in the comfort, stay in the safety. How would you speak to that?
I will be vulnerable and share a personal experience of how I did that.
Great.
So when I was in the Mormon church, and again, this is not, I am not advocating people to leave the church. This is my experience. The church offered me great assistance spiritually until it didn't. And then when it didn't, I had a hard decision to make, and which was part of the reason why I left that behind to discover. So here's what I did. As a Mormon, you don't drink alcohol. I got myself some wine. I poured myself a glass, and it was late in the evening, and I knew that I was going to leave the church enough to explore. If I returned, I returned. I wasn't throwing it completely out, just like I wasn't completely throwing out my family forever. But for this season, it was just God and I, this concept of God I had at the time. So I poured myself a glass of wine, and I said, I'm about ready to let go of this religion and everything I've known to try and find me, to try and find you. And so, cheers. Mm-hmm. And I said, if I'm on the wrong track, if I'm going somewhere.
Funny. Cheers.
No, I did, and I took a drink, but I had this disclaimer because I knew it. What I was doing in that act, Cherie, by pouring alcohol, was me divorcing my religion enough to say, I'm going to see if that's true for me when I circle back.
Because you had some trust in God that, like, you would be shown or told, yes, like, you're in the grace light to help, basically, if
I had to trust
whatever that feels like for you.
Because I trusted God knew my heart. I trusted God knew the reason why I was doing all this. He saw my pain.
The intention of your heart.
Right. Yeah. No, nobody else could see that. So I got to the point where I didn't care what anybody else thought. I was in so much pain and so lost and so heavy that it's just like, it's just you and me, God, and cheers to you. And that was part of me divorcing, again, a religion that was saying that wasn't fitting for me anymore, but I didn't want to give it up if it was the truth. But for the season that I was in, it was going in a cupboard and I was shutting the door, and that started with that glass of wine. Mm-hmm. It was symbolic to me of letting go.
So coming back to that, the letting go and kind of circling back to, how do you know you weren't deceived? How do you know that do you have like a before and after energetic space of like, this is what, because I have my own experience and I'll share a little bit about, this whole process of emancipating, like, which is basically like becoming my own authority. Not that I know everything and have all the answers, but it's like you're saying, it's God and I, it's the divine and I. So I no longer outsource my authority to another mortal human. I take input and receive feedback. But ultimately, when we're talking about authority, I've had to go through my own emancipation process to come to this space where I have this knowing and that I stand in a sovereign space and I receive my own inner authority in any given moment in time, because none of the mortal spiritual leaders live in my home, sleep in my bed, go to the grocery store with me, run my business. That's the divine and I. We partner there. Mm-hmm. So I can't, if no one else lives in my skin or between my ears or in my body, like I have to, it came to the point that it was so painful not to establish that, mm-hmm. that I was dissociating from myself and I could feel it. I had to claim that. I had to get that divine go ahead for myself. So
I get it.
Our processes are they were different in how they played out, but yeah, keep going. So So even though you were feeling the darkness, was there also this like undercurrent of, okay, you're going to go somewhere with this. This is taking you somewhere.
Well, I think I was, or not I think, I was arriving at a place that when I was doing everything within the religion that I was in, but I wasn't feeling edified and I wasn't feeling spiritual. So I thought, why? And I thought it was me. So I personalized it and made it about I'm doing something wrong, or I'm sinning, or I'm doing something that's making the spirit that I don't feel connection to spirit in within that. So I wanted to test that theory. Part of my freedom was testing the theory of who is Taunia, and actually even who is God to me, because I wasn't relating. I wanted to test out the theory of God. Like, are you a white male figure? And I do not mean this disrespectfully. Again, this
Yeah,
is
I know.
my journey. And I want to say one thing to that before I go on. My belief is our personal relationship with a divine being, and that could be a mountaintop, that can be nature, that can be God, a man, Heavenly Father, whatever name you want to put to that. That is as personal and precious as your fingerprint. Nobody else should have a say in your personal concept of God, of a divine power. That is none of their damn business. That's
Mhm.
yours, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Why do you think there people's and establishments and whatnot? Why do you think they're so threatened by a statement like that?
Well, you know how when you feel something's true and it feels true for you through the very bones of your being,
Through resonance.
through resonance, it's hard for us to imagine that that can't be true for somebody else. It feels good to feel validated in what you feel is true. It's that tribe in us, I think, that
Mm-hmm.
tribal nature. Hey, this is so true. And then that part of us that, like, can you validate that this is true?
Mm-hmm.
Can you validate this is true? So if we have more people in our camp, it feels better. It feels more supported that this could be the truth. And I was one of those, Cherie, I catch myself still that I thought I was doing the right thing by helping people see where they're being off track.
Mm-hmm.
How freaking
Like in judgment,
self-righteous.
more like
Yes,
judgment. Yeah.
but I get it. I get it. I really did think that, let me help you, show you where you're erring. I thought, Shri, I really thought I was one of those mindsets that thought I was right and that I was going to help them see, so that with the undertones of, because I love you, because I care about you, I'm going to show you how you're wrong.
Yeah.
It's things asinine now.
Which implies when we take that stance, right? That implies that we are more righteous, we are more holy, we have more answers, our beliefs are the right ones.
You don't know that at the time.
Right. And so you're like coming from that space, like you feel like you're being altruistic,
You
but
do.
you
You
have
really think,
blinders on because
yeah.
you're not really being unconditional. You're not really seeking to understand. When I started to have my own process of disillusionment, dark night of the soul, questioning, deprogramming, getting to the heart of things, um, it's like I kind of freaked out some people, and they didn't ask me, why, what are you learning? What's your truth? It was only like, no, you're going against the system, so we don't know what to do with you. You're probably under the influence of Satan right now, right? When I knew that I wasn't, I felt that resonance you speak of. I felt the divine, literally, if I could paint a metaphor, it was like a rubber band being drawn back for years and years and years. Finally, that rubber band, finally, God was like, go, and flipped the rubber band and catapulted me into the unknown, which was actually the known,
Well, you know
because it
what?
was more familiar to me than some of the dogma that didn't resonate. The
But,
rules. Yeah.
tell me if you feel this way along what you just shared. My compassionate side for people, it'll be compassionate until they start to bulldoze me. Then I'm like, my sass comes on. But I have compassion for people that approach me that way, like you said, that rightness way, because I played that. Because here's what I know. Unless you're on the other side of that, being the one that somebody's telling you how you should do it and feeling unheard and feeling that judgment, until you've experienced that, you're kind of not educated to how you're coming across. It's almost like you have to go through the pain to get to understand how the wound feels.
Yeah.
So I help educate in a soft way. I'm like, well, yeah, that's a truth. That's a truth for you, but it's not a capital T truth. If somebody wants to banter with me, I'm not interested because they're not interested in hearing my perspective or what. And that's precious. I'm not going to share that with you. This is not a debate. And that's how I'll end it sometimes. If I feel somebody isn't honoring, I'm like, my spirituality isn't up for debate.
Yeah.
That's a
And I will
personal
not
thing.
negotiate my worth or my worthiness before God with you.
Right.
And I got that from Brene Brown.
Yeah, that's a good one.
It's like, that's not open for, like, my salvation is sacred to me. It's not an institutional management kind of situation. It's between me and my creator. And at no time when I feel resonance, when I feel the spirit, when I feel warmth, when I feel it called The Burning Woman, which came from a book title by Lucy Pierce. When I feel that, I'm unshakable. It doesn't matter what programming's coming in or what I'm being taught. It's almost like God's going, yeah, you're good. I sent you here to find truth and you're doing it. You're finding it for you.
Right.
Yeah. I'll go ahead.
I'm going to bring in another, like a devil's advocate viewpoint, like you said earlier.
Yeah. We're pretty good at that.
Oh, I know, right? So as much as I honor and respect the place you're at now, and anybody else who chooses not to be, who chooses to do their spirituality in a way unique to a tribe, I'll just put it that way, for lack of a better word. Those who choose to stay in religions, I want to give voice to the fact of, I don't think you're lost. I don't think you need to explain to me why it's true. I respect that because there was a time when I did feel edified in a tribal situation. That's my word for religion, in a sense of tribe and supported in that. It did work for me. So I'm speaking to the point of emancipation when it's not working, when you're compromising on yourself, then I say, oh my gosh, that's that brave place. If you're not being nudged out of the nest, don't get the hell out of the nest. Stay there.
Right.
If it's working for you, that's not worth. We're not speaking about that though.
So how do you know when it's not working for you? Because I think I try, and again, this is completely sacred to each individual. So there's no advocation either way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. But I see soul sickness. I can sit and see it in many places of spiritual enlightenment, not just church, but I see groups, and we'll just talk about women for a moment, where whether it's in a retreat space or other places of learning or enlightenment, yoga, you could say, church, where there's almost like this vacant look, like, how do I fit into this? Who am I? Mm-hmm. But there isn't a lot of courage around transparency where there could be a group. I mean, in some retreat spaces there are, but definitely not at church. I could just feel the dissonance. I could feel the longing for these women that, am I doing it okay? Am I going to make it? Am I worthy? Am I normal? Is it okay to do this or think this or feel this? Would this be spiritual? That's when I say, and that's when I want to literally, that's where it got too painful for me to sit in that space because I picked up all the energy of that. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, it was reflecting back to me because I was feeling it. And I thought, if I'm going to truly feel edified, I need to step away from this space and really define myself outside of what was handed to me and what I was told, who I was told I was, and what I was told I needed to think, feel, do, and believe. And that break, which wasn't a clean break, but it was enough of one. It was more of a sabbatical to sent me even further down into. And I am so grateful that I had mentors during this time, Taunia.
Oh yeah.
Because I wouldn't have survived. It was empowered people, a woman who can stand in her space and proclaim a truth and not have to run it by a committee. Women who are in their womb space, women who are wisdom rising, if you will, women so in touch with their divine feminine or their personal power that they were unequivocal in their approach to, and I see you that way, honestly. And sometimes it's the people close to us that we don't want to bother talking to about it because, we're so close in age and everything. But I guess what I'm saying is, like, even though I felt like I was spinning a little bit, like, my best analogy is being tethered to the mothership. But like you're an astronaut and you have that little thing that, like, from your suit that ties you to the ship. And then all of a sudden you're untethered and it's God that does it. So this is completely me. I'm not putting this on anyone else. But for all the things I was longing to learn and feel, especially about ancient mother and all of the things that I was being so, Mary Magdalene, things like that I was so drawn to learn that weren't institutionally approved. I had already gone out of the box, but finally got so painful to sit in a space where I didn't resonate so much anymore. And I was getting triggered a lot by some of the low vibration comments and things that were all about judgment and whatnot, and black, white, and absolutism and dogma, that I finally just had to, like, take that tether and just sabbatical the tether and just break away. And I felt like I was spinning and floating and all alone. And I think the dark night is not, I think the dark night is you kind of have to do that just to come back. And that the programming is, if you do that, you'll never come back. You'll be floating in space forever and you're doomed, and you're not rooted in anything. And so you're too vulnerable to attack. And it takes a lot of bravery, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it takes a lot of bravery to do that. It's not reckless. It's not self-serving, other than it's between you and your creator. So I just want to say, like, like you said, it works for you for a time until it didn't, until you had to find.
Indicator. That's the indicator. And here's the thing. Here's the truth to it. And you were talking about it. The truth is, when you're going to be reclaiming a level of freedom, because you're starting to wake up to the fact of, this doesn't work for me, whether that's a marriage, whether that's a religion, whether that's a job, an area you live, whatever that is, that you're starting to wake up to, I am in my divine discontent. This is not working for me. That's scary when you first see it, because truth be said, you will be asked to put your skin in the game. That's the truth for the freedom. And that looks like a hot mess to the outside world, and it feels like a hot mess inside. It's terrifying. And right alongside that terrifying, there's something brand new, adventurous, and that wakes you up inside, that is the gift right alongside with the payment. You're getting something the same time you're suffering and giving, you're also receiving.
Yes.
It is a time, like you said, it is a time to seek out mentors who have navigated or have been on the other side. But here's the thing. When I did seek out a mentor or a guide or a teacher or a resource, I was super discerning about it, because I just let go of everything and everyone to discover myself. I didn't need more input for somebody saying, this is who you are. So I sought out teachers and resources that said, let me help you dig up inside and express what you're trying to say.
Yeah, I love that. And I just saw something really powerful on Instagram. It's not somebody I follow, it's the litness, but it popped into somebody's share. It's the quote was, sometimes your leaving speaks louder than your staying. Mm-hmm. And they likened it to, do you wrestle? Are you constant? Because I mean, we hear about the wrestle a lot, wrestling with God or whatever, and that can be a very healthy thing. But then you notice other dissonance and discrepancy. It's like, do you wrestle with all of this dissonance and just keep silencing it in yourself, and you just keep not speaking it out and just sitting in it, and instead of trying to raise the consciousness or raise the conversation to something higher, raise the vibration, if you will. And part of it was around, like, why are we marginalizing people? If this is supposed to be a place of inclusion, why aren't we including everyone? So anyway, it was just really interesting to me. It said, are you afraid to say what you really think about certain issues? When you speak, are you heard, or are you silenced and corrected? And then it talks about the church, but it's just talking about all churches, this person. Can you see how the church has been complicit in creating the conditions of inequity that we deal with now, today, in large part by its silence? How's the insistence on hierarchy? How has this harmed us? Hard won but unpopular opinion. The longer you stay in the pew, the longer progress is delayed. Now, again, not advocating for anyone to not. I think this is actually quite symbolic. The pew could be anywhere. It could be at the PTA meeting when they're having a discussion that is not aligned with a higher truth or is exclusionary. It could be with a group of women or friends. It could be in your family.
I'm glad you're saying that, because it's not about, and you know that, and you're bringing that in. In fact, you're bringing this point in. It's not about our church. It's not about a religion. It's about the world.
Yeah.
The world will test you. If you're not choosing, the world will choose for you, whether that's through a marriage, a religion, a PTA, your education system. The world will choose for you if you're not choosing.
What would you say to someone who is feeling fed? Where, okay, you could have two people that maybe they're the same age, maybe they have the same family constellation, maybe they even have a lot of the same interests, and they're both very spiritual people, but one person cannot sit in the space that other person can sit in and feel aligned.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make both one right or the other wrong.
Right.
And that's what I'm battling with, is getting people to get past the whole she's right and she's wrong, or this is the way and that's not the way. It's like, no, one person's being fed there. So that person, like, it works for them. Like you say, but there may come a point that it doesn't work, or there may not ever come a point where it doesn't work.
I think it's an education, Cherie, because when you're one of those people thinking that you need to help somebody, or try to understand somebody, there's a point, because you want to understand because you love, but there's a point where you can't relate to it. Like you said, if somebody's, for the example of the church example, if you were saying one person is, if it's in a family dynamic, one person is relating to it, it's feeding them, another person, it's not, it's killing their spirit. So how do those two sisters in the same family have such different experiences? Why? It's that spiritual fingerprint again. It is unique. When we try to make it similar, it dilutes that whole experience of, you're a sovereign being. You have your life. You have your life experiences. You have your personality. You have your gifts and your talents. Nobody's going to know God, see God, or want God the same way, not even in the same family. I don't care if you're freaking twins.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what you're hitting on too is also like, and we had talked about this before, like where there's a cultural payoff to stay silent, to stay complicit, to be in people pleasing, to need approval. And I played that for quite a while until I could not do it anymore. That's actually one of the reasons I started this podcast, because I had things to say and I needed a quote unquote microphone for my own mental health. I couldn't say what I wanted to say in a business setting. I couldn't say what I needed to say in a church setting. I couldn't say what I wanted to say in all these places and domains that I play in. And it was like, hey, this is a really big world, people. We tend to live in these bubbles that pay off for us culturally. And it's cozy and it's safe. And there's nothing wrong with that. We need those communities. We need that safety. The brave work, and I think people like Brene Brown and some of the other leaders that I follow that are really in their bodies and they're really doing like brave, vulnerable stuff, is that they venture out of what's comfortable to raise the consciousness so that all these bubbles get burst, quote unquote, everywhere, and we can all be one. We can all not have to separate. Oh, you're more righteous than that person. Okay, you can go here. Okay, well, you're more awake than this person, so you fit over here. I think that hierarchy mentality is coming down. Like, I think it really is coming down because it makes some, especially in religions, and I'm not just talking about Mormonism, because I talk to many people from many faiths and traditions, that everyone thinks they have the truth and that everyone else is, oh, too bad for them. We feel sorry for you that you don't know what we have, or you're doing it wrong. This is the way we interpret it here.
Mhm.
And so what happens is you get these cloistered communities where it's very insular, and it becomes very us and them,
Mhm.
us against the world. And I don't worship a God like that. I think he's everywhere. She's everywhere. They are everywhere.
Yeah, that's a
Just
good
speaking
point.
my feisty right now.
No, I mean, I think that part of the gift of this pandemic, and then this isolation from each other, during the quarantine, and other things happening with, Black Lives Matters, from the Me Too to so many different things are there. It's the same thing. The LGBT, all of it's saying the same thing. Can't we just all kind of coexist here?
Yeah.
Can I be me and you be you? And can we coexist? And I think we're on the pioneering edge of it, where we're learning how to do that, because it's not been like that before. This
Yeah.
is where those of us, uh, and whoever us is, when you're pioneering something new and a new way to be, which is I choose me, you choose you, and I'm good with that. That's where I want to walk. So that's kind of a pioneering mindset. Well,
Yes.
then I have to have a grace card for those who are like, wait a minute, the game changed. Well, this is the way we do it. It's going to freak people out. We
Yeah.
just changed the game. It's supposed to be changed. It's meant to be changed. But aren't we being more of the same if we're judging somebody else for um, wanting to play it the way that it was?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yes. Yes. And I think questions are powerful, when you go into inquiry and you ask. One of the most powerful questions that I asked myself, separating from, all my responsibilities, all the roles I play, all the communities I fit into, including family, everything, just here's me. This is me. And it's like, Cherie, are you really free? Um, and I think, in my last episode, we talked about slavery. We also talked about freedom. We talked about trafficking and slavery and all of this, all these hot button issues that were so triggered by everyone's like, how could anyone, right, do that? How could anyone have a slave, or how could anyone traffic another human and not see their soul and not see their, but I started to realize, like, how have I done that for myself? How have I put myself in chains? How have I limited myself? My big goal, which is, I used to think that, um, there would be this community someday where, there was hierarchy, and it would be this, we'll call it a Zion community, where everyone got along and everyone had love. And then there were outsiders, and there was a gate or something. And the not righteous people had to stay out, and they couldn't be with the righteous people. And then in that community, there's going to be leaders and, um, people that told us, whatever, what to do and whatever, authority figures.
Mm-hmm.
I say, let's open the doors to that. I think that people will naturally gather where they feel aligned and where they're seeking. I think what you're saying is eventually that's what we're creating in this world, is a place where love can be the catalyst. And it isn't about race or gender or sexual orientation or belief systems or any of that. So my goal is to take my blinders off, so I'm not seeing myself a certain way as the best way to be or think, or I'm more awake or this or that. It's like, no, like I have so much to learn. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what can this child teach me? What can, my super orthodox neighbor teach me? What can my, you know what I mean? It's a path I'm trying to navigate. I get triggered a lot because past experience where I was silenced or was told I was not righteous or whatever, or I wasn't doing things good enough. Like you were saying earlier, like, well, it must be me. What am I doing wrong?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, what I was doing wrong is I wasn't free. That's the only thing that I was doing wrong when I was under the system of being told what to do, really.
Cherie, I think that's the indicator right there for any listeners going, how do I know if I'm just being, is it me or not? I think a good indicator is when you start to have that very question. Is something wrong with me?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, the answer to that is yes. And guess what it is? Somewhere you're not free. Something's in your life. So when you're aligned with some sort of organization or tribe, whatever that is, if you're starting to go, what's wrong with me? That's a good question. That means you're starting to go, I think I've outgrown this mindset that this tribe holds. I think I've outgrown, right? So it's not about making a tribe wrong, but that you're evolving in the way you want to experience life. So then it requires, but what I hear of the longing in you, and I have a similar yearning, Cherie, is as we're all making these changes, and some of us will choose to evolve in different ways that others won't. Just what the point is can we give each other a grace card? Can't we do this with more love instead of judgment on ourselves and with other people? And I hear that similar yearning with you. It's like, I'm going to change my mind. I'm going to remain teachable because the truth that I hold as a truth right now, I give that permission to evolve. And if I have to be right about it and be married to it, I can never evolve because that has to stay true.
Yes. I think you've hit upon it, is the openness and the expansiveness of not settling on this is the way it is. That's called a closed belief system. When somebody says, this is it, this is the way, this is the ultimate, like that's a trigger for me. Whereas before I would have craved to know those things.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like being in the mystery and the not knowing is the freedom, because you're not in a closed belief. You're not shut down to what could come in to possibly get you to reason or feel a different way. And as long as we have these, cloisters of closed belief systems, it really limits our capacity to really open the doors and completely love. I think that's what Jesus was doing. I think that's what he was trying to teach. I personally feel that he was a revolutionary. He was trying to draw people away from the systems, away from the very orthodox black, white perfection models of like doing everything right. He was about, let's find the kingdom within. And again, this is what I've arrived at. This is my truth speaking for, 2020 right now.
Right.
And what I love though, Taunia, and I think that you and I are very aligned with this, is that there's so much mercy and grace and compassion for where we're at when we're trying to come to our own truth. It's not a shaming. It's not like God is standing over shaming the process. Like, oh, well, you missed this part. And what it does, like you should have listened to that person. Like I literally for decades felt like there was this divine hovering, micromanaging, that I was doing something a little bit wrong, that I didn't quite do a spiritual practice the right way enough. And therefore I missed the blessing, or I missed the truth, or I missed the aha, or what could have helped my situation. And I didn't realize until I stepped back from it that it really wasn't so much about the spiritual practice as much as it is where my heart was. And my heart has always wanted to have that divine, beloved union. Always. So that's why I feel like God now has me on this long leash going, okay, yep, you can go to France and try to find the Mary Magdalene pilgrimage. Okay, well, you can go over here and read the Quran. Oh, you want Buddha on your wall? Great.
I love it. You know what? It's like that love, divine. I interchange the word because sometimes it just doesn't fit me. When I say God, I have this image of an elderly white male, and it's not that for me anymore. I don't mean, because somebody that is, and
Yeah.
And I get it. I totally get it. But so sometimes I'll say the word divine or beloved. I will switch my verbiage around because that concept of that higher being's switching for me. But I do think it's a love fest. And so my concept of a divine higher being wouldn't say, Taunia, I'm going to give you a life that you can explore and discover who you are, innately are, but you have to do it this way. I believe he gave me absolute sovereignty and freedom and joy in the journey, but it's through this world that I share with other people that I start to forget that I don't remember that I have that ultimate freedom to find and connect with that being, that source, in the way that only I can.
That's why there's not a one size fits all, because there's billions of people who are very diverse in their approach to how they process information, how they see things in their mind's eye, how they feel resonance. Yes, I wholeheartedly embrace what you're saying. Okay, so as we kind of wrap this up, like how, and again, let's go back to the devil's advocate a little bit, because I know there are some people who literally might be listening to this experiencing cognitive dissonance, in terms of, oh my gosh, like, why would I want to go through the dark night? That's, I'm sorry, but that's not God's way to go into darkness so you can find, the light, or, I could put everything at risk. Why would I do that? What would be your answer to that? I have my own, but I'll let you
Okay.
answer.
So my personal experience is I've had that, and that's what kept me in places, be it marriages, religions, careers, jobs. It kept me there longer than I needed to be, but I had to learn that. So now that I know that, the indication, when I start to get an indication that I'm not free being me, then I know I need to check in on myself. And can I read a journal entry, Cherie?
Yes.
Okay, because this is how I help keep myself in check. I have a morning practice, and I do this 7 days a week. It's the first thing I do when I get out of bed. I contemplate, and it's my time to connect with the beloved, and it's my time to take honest self-reflection, not of shame, but of how am I doing, and am I free in my life? So I've called myself out on it in a loving way. So here's a journal entry. It was over a year ago. You have more freedom than you're allowing yourself to experience. You hesitate to choose, speak, and act because you're seeking approval and perfection. I challenge you to show up, speak up, and be who you are in the moment. Moralizing your choices is stifling you. Concerning yourself with how you will be perceived and received keeps you silent. How confining. Move through this, dear one. You have my permission to unashamedly, creatively, completely and utterly, freely be yourself. The dark night, it's a catalyst, but for the rest of my life, I will always have to remind myself how to be free.
Yeah.
This happened just a year ago. I'm still having these conversations.
There was a phrase in there about moralizing. It's not like you would become immoral.
No.
It's just that you become this judgy, black, white, absolutist, right, wrong, good, bad person that no one from the margins can relate to.
I say experiment with it. Instead of saying,
Yeah.
no, it's morally, like for alcohol, for me, when I was breaking myself from an organized religion, I did the very thing that particular religion said not to do, drink. And I said, cheers to God. And I'm like, here we go. Because that was moralizing for me. And I wanted to discover and challenge that belief.
Yes. So when we say, what are we really leaving? Not really leaving behind relationships. You're not leaving behind God or Jesus or whatever, or service or truth or integrity or values or love. But to find those things for yourself, oftentimes there's a brave act of disassociating for a time so you can fuel up and discover what's authentic to you. Are you doing this out of fear, out of people pleasing? Are you staying in because it's comfortable, but you feel stuck and you feel bored? The peace with it, how do you make peace with it regardless of cultural pressures, for me was the real issue, because in my journaling, and I have my journal in front of me right now, my core values are like, when I'm on my deathbed, what will I be proud I've done? What will I regret I didn't do? What will I regret that I didn't say?
Mm-hmm.
What lives in me that needs to seek expression that is maybe not going to make me super popular in some circles, but might be what other people need to hear for their own emancipation. So that's big for me. But one thing I did underline in my journal, it's very interesting, Taunia, because this was on the 12th of June of this year. And you just kind of dictated your download from the divine for you. And this is what I was told. Things are changing. Things will change culturally. You are free, Cherie. I literally heard, you are free, Cherie. And then it was like, but wait, like, I don't trust myself to be this free agent spiritually. And it was like, don't feel compelled to do anything. You are free. And it was like, you are emancipated. You answer to your heart, to the pressure, to the presence in you, and to your connection to God, to source love. So this is what I underlined and completely like highlighted in my own journal. Release what others think of you, and only then are you truly free.
That is so true.
So for me, that's like the last thing, because we're only caged really in our own beings. Like nothing's really holding us down other than our own mental chains or patterns. And as soon as it doesn't resonate anymore, as soon as it goes flat, as soon as it feels like it's done out of obligation instead of fire and passion and connection and direct experience and love and all of those flowery fruits of the spirit, if it's not feeling that way for you, it's time to take a step back and say, how can I find this in my own being, irrespective of all these groups and systems I belong to? How do I find that in myself? And some people can find that in themselves and sit in those settings and not get triggered. So yeah, again, we're not advocating one thing or the other than just be true to you.
Yeah, do you. Can I say one thing on top of this?
Yes.
For those that are saying, I can't tell if I'm happy in my marriage, religion, job, whatever that is, if you're feeling that sense of discontent and you find yourself asking the question, what's wrong with me? May I pose that you ask, what's wrong with this? This setting, this environment, this relationship, this choice. That's what's really wrong. Nothing's wrong with you. It's an indicator that you're waking up that something's wrong with this.
Especially if your heart is in the right place. If your heart truly seeks some longing that you feel, some longing is the best word I have, like in your heart to connect, and you're just not, it's evading, like it's just slipping past you, it's evading you. It's like, for me, it was like a dangling carrot. I couldn't make this longing fit anymore. And I wasn't getting fed. I had to go in and explore. And again, it isn't about leaving or staying. It's finding your own journey and letting yourself be guided to it instead of in a space of resistance. Allow it to unfold and to lead you. And you do have to put, I think, the precursor to real spiritual maturation isn't about following something. It isn't about following another system or organization or whatever. It's true maturation is the emancipation. It's the sovereignty. It's okay. Yep. Wherever I stand in the world and wherever I go, I have that connection and I trust it and it has my back. So yes. Anything else that you would add? I mean, we kind of went through a lot of different, little avenues here, but tying it back. I remember you had said a phrase when we first started talking about when you felt like you had to, go into that wilderness and you entered that dark night and you sort of drew this line in the sand. The phrase that you had said something like, okay, this is who you were told you are. This is the life that you were handed. How do you still hold that in gratitude and almost like hold space for that and honor it and still be you? How have you found to just, you know, like
You need to
be you, really?
take my history of where I've been and
Yeah, because
and
now you're in a
not
great, you're
be
getting
bitter.
married. You've been
Mhm.
with Joe for 7 years. You guys are, I've just seen how your life has just fallen into place, and you have all this embodied wisdom gained hard fought, right, through many life experiences. But now here you are, and you're very present with yourself. That's my experience of you. So how do you bridge that again, like holding your heritage sacred or putting in a space of honor, and moving into like the real you? And sometimes they coexist, sometimes they're together, and sometimes they're just, you're holding one over here, but you're being, you know true to you in the other domain.
Yeah, if I understand the question and how I'm hearing it, it's where I've been, and if it's not who I am today, but maybe there's some other people or times that I get up against something that I was that I'm not who I am now. If that's the question you're
Yes.
asking,
Yes.
okay, so how, if some people will absolutely fall away from your life, it's just part of it. And that it's not some stay if they can, but here's the thing that I've done for myself. And it's scary to say this, I'm not diminishing it. It's first and foremost, I have a commitment and a firm boundary of putting me first. And I don't care if anybody thinks that's selfish, because this is my life, and that doesn't mean that I'm not going to care about other people. In fact, choosing me deepens my level of what you, thank you for the acknowledgement of being present. I can be more present with people and be more accepting of others because I am of myself. But if I don't give myself that gift first, I cannot. It's superficial. You can't give
Right.
it to somebody else. It's kind of through words instead of authentically being that way. So because I give myself full permission on things, and again, I'm still navigating, I'm not all evolved. I'm a higher version of myself than I was even a year ago, but I'm still evolving. But the gift of the people, be it the relationships, religions, things that no longer fit in my world today, they helped wake me up. They were part of my journey. They were part of the evolution and education of Taunia, the woman I am today. That's why I can honor them.
Mm. Yeah, that's beautifully stated. I think that's, you know, um, this heritage that each person carries, there's a dark part to history. There always is. I mean, we're seeing that play out now. Every awakening that's happening right now is like, oh my gosh, what did this teaching mean? And like people taking down statues, and like it's just people are really looking at like, what does this heritage mean for me? Um, and I think there is a way to honor that without distancing and the person and the relationships, and that again, we're all just wanting unity consciousness. What you and I are talking about is just, how do we attain unity consciousness? How do we open the doors? How do we become more expansive and also allow people to be where they are? Because there is a process for each person to get to that sovereignty. And I know it's not the goal for everyone.
Right. And that's the thing. That does not appeal to everybody. But for those listening to the podcast where they're feeling that way, that's a wake up call, sweetie. You're right on time. Male or
Mm-hmm.
female, I'm talking to you both. Like that discontent you're feeling. Um,
It's a
that
precursor to
it's a
your,
precursor,
yeah.
yeah. And like you said, find a resource that has navigated that before, because that's hugely helpful. Whether that's a coach, a mentor, a book, something that helps you feel like that it's resonating more with, oh, I have permission. There's a sense of you need to kind of bump around in the dark a little bit until you really feel like, wow, I really can choose for myself. I mean, I really
Yeah.
can.
And the best mentors are merely guides. They're not dictating to you how you should feel and what you need to do. They're helping you access those wisdom spaces inside of yourself and guide you to get your own answers. I think some religions attempt that, but it's like, here are the parameters. Here's what's, if you get this, then it's not right. So you have to do it this way. Um, or yeah, you can get your personal revelation, but if you get this answer, that means you've been deceived or whatever, right? So it's the best guys. And when I was telling you, when I entered my dark night, and I was literally grasping to find truly divinely goddess confidence. That I was looking for that. I needed to see that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was sent all over the world, and I saw many examples of it. But the women who unequivocally stood in the space of knowing, who were some of them very warrior-like, some of them not, um, it gave rise to like, okay, well, if you're going to attach to me to learn from me, I'm not going to tell you what your truth is. I'm not going to tell you the truth because, to be honest, it's all a mystery.
That's it. Nobody's truly an expert, especially when it comes to your life. I'm
Yeah.
going to just say that. I have a problem. I don't know if it's a problem, but I kind of go, when I hear somebody say, I'm an expert of something, unless you have a PhD that's just with science, even then, science will still evolve, math will evolve. Anybody saying they're an expert, I can understand why they're saying that. They put the time in, the education in. But when it comes to my life, no.
Yeah, you're the expert.
Exactly.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to what I was saying, like only you live in your own skin and only you have had your karmic experiences and only you have lived your life really 24/7. So for an exterior person, however well-meaning or enlightened they are, whatever guru, prophet, leader, whatever, whoever they are, I've met many, to be honest, I've met like prophetesses and priestesses and whatever, and they may have a nugget for me. They may have a something that resonates. I read something. Those are all little breadcrumbs but ultimately, I have to see myself in direct contact with source.
Yeah.
I had to do it for my mental health. I had to take that back. That's the only way that I can describe it. It looked messy, I think, to a
It
lot of
always
people.
does. It always does.
But I thought, most of the people in history that I have come to really admire and revere had a very messy path to their full awakening and their full embodiment. And it didn't have a stamp of institutional approval. In fact, they had to go against, I'm talking about feminine mystics, saints and sages throughout history. Some of them were burned at the stake. Some of them were told they couldn't pray without a priest there. And these are women who were honestly like badass in their approach to that union with the beloved that you and I are talking about. They did it anyway. They took it into their own closets and their own journals, but they did it. I think where we're at in this great awakening is moving into giving everyone, like, if you look at YouTube, like handing everyone a microphone and saying, what do you think? How do you
Yeah,
feel about
and then
this?
really listening.
Yes.
And even if we don't relate to it, like that's okay. We don't have. They're not. It's like a buffet, right? There's all these options. Well, if somebody puts sweet potatoes on your plate and it's just not your thing, don't feel like you have to eat it. But at least, what's that you got? Sweet potatoes. Oh, okay, no thanks. But that doesn't make sweet potatoes wrong,
Yeah.
right? Like like you said,
It's the whole thing. It's not compulsory. Truth is not compulsory. It either flows through you and you resonate with it, or it doesn't.
you can't force feed.
You can't. And I love
No.
that buffet thing because I look at aspects of Mormonism on the buffet. I look at aspects of, the Bhagavad Gita and the Quran and, all these, the Gnostic Gospels. Like, I look at at all of it and go, like you were saying, some of it is not my thing, but there might be, I can't throw the whole thing away because there's
No,
nuggets of
right.
that thing that really resonate. So to lump life and the universe and mysteries and everything into like one piece of that buffet or make it the buffet is
Yeah.
almost laughable because it excludes 99.999% of creation and cultures and ethnicities, and it's just too narrow. And for me, I needed something that opened it up. I needed an expansive view. And even saying that, I know I probably have a lot of blinders on to things that I maybe would eschew that are actually true that I'm putting to the side because I don't know what to do with them yet.
Yeah. But you know what I love about that, though, Cherie, what you just said, is when something doesn't fit, instead of, sometimes we can tell when it really isn't a good fit, but other times if we're not sure, that we can put it in a cupboard and shut the door and maybe circle back, but we don't have to immediately dismiss it. Where the more that you travel and the bumps and the bruises along the way, the gift of that is that you start to learn not to judge things as much, whether that's a truth
Yeah.
or an experience, right?
Yeah.
So I shelf things all the time. I don't know about that one, but I'm not going to toss it out.
But I think where I'm really at right now is just, I really love it when people respect that I've not been manipulated, that I have my full faculties about me. They don't have to be sad that I'm going to, burn or get super deceived. I'm very grounded in the path of where I'm being guided and led and where I feel internal resonance. I'm not suffering. I'm not being denied blessings. Um, the only thing that I would say is that I don't have it all figured out. And I can't sit in a closed belief system that says it does. So I know there are people that sit in closed belief systems who actually have open belief systems. And so I respect, yeah, it's just there. I don't have regrets around taking logic and rational things and putting them aside in favor of following my heart. That's not, I just don't have any regret in that. Taking the chains off of, oh my gosh, if you don't sit here and stay in this space, like you're really going to go downhill, and you take your family with you, et cetera. Like that's just fear based. And it's not grounded in love. And so I'm gonna stay in, yeah, it doesn't bring me joy to process that. I'm not
That
taking
doesn't
anyone down
feel,
with me. I'm letting
yeah.
people be where they're at. Yeah.
Well, it is painful to have somebody have a judgment, but I guess I'm feisty enough now. And again, I want to make a disclaimer. I'm not so evolved that I still don't get trapped into wondering about what people feel. But I only go so far because I'm feistily guarded around me giving a flat rat's ass anymore, that I change my course so that somebody else is comfortable.
Yeah.
I can't afford that. I cannot afford to abandon myself like that ever again. So I'm willing to let somebody else be uncomfortable with my decision than for me to ever compromise at that level again.
Yeah.
That's my new value.
Right. Right. And like you were saying before, it feels good to feel validated in supportive communities where everyone
Totally.
has the exact same set of, belief systems. And it takes a certain kind of fortification and groundedness to be the black sheep. I don't even think that's the right word. It's not a black, well, for them, you're the black sheep, but for you, it's
The
like,
outsider. Yeah.
yeah, it's brave work. And it's daring, and it's also worth the risk, in my opinion. Sometimes the most awakened people are labeled the black sheep.
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
because they can sense this more distortion, and they have maybe a more sensitive composition to them, so that they can sniff hypocrisy a little more quickly, and they rebel against it, and therefore they're labeled the black sheep. And we could go on and on about all that, but this has been super cool, Taunia, to have this really open-ended discussion with you. And I think we're saying, basically be you.
Be you.
Freedom to be
Yeah.
you, permission granted. Um, you don't have to be in fear of. I used to operate this whole thing of disappointing God, not because I was out partying and sleeping around or nothing like that, of just like, oh my gosh, if I veer a little tiny bit over into this realm, I might get deceived and I might disappoint God. I probably ran that program a solid 40 years. And I'm 51 now, but it was just heavy. And I think it was about 10 years ago that I finally was like, you know what? I'm super fascinated by this. I'm going for this. This, when it came to church, it was like, where is mother? Where is the feminine face of God in this? I see glimpses, but I'm not getting fed. I need to go over here. And so I think what you said, Taunia, was brilliant, where you just told all the listeners, hey, if you're sitting in a space where you feel discontent, that's usually a precursor to some level of an awakening, and you're not alone. There are many people who feel it, they just don't speak it out. Like I was sharing that quote about the silence in the pews. There are many, many people who are venturing into, their own authenticity, who have felt a level of discontent in many settings, not just religion, many academia. I mean, we could go on and on. Sometimes family systems can be toxic, not ours, but there are people who need to literally do the brave work of distancing themselves from toxic family and friends.
Can I speak to
who
what you're
love
saying?
that, who love them and who honor them. It's a tough. It's not easy.
Well, that discontent that you're speaking of, I think a really the natural thing to that is the first place we go is we internalize it to, and again, what's wrong with me?
Yeah.
What's wrong with me? And if I had one mantra that kept me going through those 5 years of self-discovery, it was this: my discomfort is my ticket to freedom. Because
Mm-hmm.
everything felt wrong. I felt so alone. And I did have that head noise. To say that it's easy, no, it's not. Because you think, what am I losing? And oh no, I'm alone in the world. But I couldn't not do it. There was something bigger calling me forward. I was so uncomfortable. But again, that mantra of my discomfort is my ticket to freedom. And that was the truth with a capital T.
Mm. Thank you, Tanya. That's a great place to end. My discomfort is my ticket to freedom. And look at every revolutionary, every thought leader and way shower. They always stepped out of their comfort zone. And even in business, we have this mantra, like everything you want is outside your comfort zone. It's true for everything. You venture outside. What is that poem? I took the road less traveled and it made all the difference. That's really what we're talking about. This whole discussion.
It is not a paved road. That's right. I mean,
Because you got to pave your own.
You got to pave your own.
Everyone has to pave their own road, and so there is solidarity in other truth seekers and people who've walked that before you, who can guide you. And again, it's not dismissing the establishments and those voices there too. It's just in your own sovereignty, in your own human form, in your own soul path, there is an individuation or a healthy disconnect, if you will, from the known into your own wilderness.
Mm-hmm.
And finding that again, makes all the difference. Just like that poem said, I took the road less traveled and it made all the difference.
It is a glorious road. It really is. It takes you to the most mystical of places, the most beautiful of places that you didn't know existed, but you got to get off the main road.
Yeah. It's a whole vista. It's a whole different outlook. It's a different set of glasses, and it's very, very expansive. So thank you, Taunia, for you. I'm sure, let's just tell the listeners, like, you and I keep having these dreams. We've had them for years, like independent of each other, where we're in a wilderness, you and I, and we find each other. It's crazy stuff.
Yeah, since a little girl, I'd have dreams, and it was you and me, and we were on the precipice of cliffs, and sometimes I'd save you, and sometimes you would save me, but we were on very dangerous terrain. I had that dream off and on through my growing up with you.
Same. And we always shared a room. We always, growing up, we shared, well, we didn't always share clothes, but
no, you helped yourself to my clothes.
I know. And we even roomed at college for a while, and I've been a part of, some of your trauma. You've been a part of mine. I think where we're at now, that we're in our 50s.
Yeah.
where it's a different viewpoint. It's all this life experience behind us and going, okay, walking through all these waters and meeting all these beautiful people and communities to bring us to the place where we get to support each other in that sovereignty and respect and honor where the other is at, as well as our other family and friend groups. And yeah, so I just honor your wisdom and being born first and, going through stuff that I didn't have to go through, being second born.
Well, Cherie, I admire you, and I have seen you absolutely blossom from growing up and that transition into high school and married, and then, Mrs. Utah, and you burst out and became a rose, and that way you have continued to blossom all of your life as I've been walking, sometimes literally beside you, and sometimes I'm in the background, sometimes I'm in the foreground, but I'm so proud of who the woman you are and who you're becoming, and I mean that. That's not cheesy. I literally mean that, Cherie. I love and adore you, and you're so brave.
Thank you, Taunia. I have very tender feelings towards you. And I think we just have always kind of got each other. And it's great to be able to step into, honoring our parents. Our parents were teenagers when they got married, and they created, this family, this huge family, 7 children.
Talk about brave. Oh my gosh.
And we're all taking very different paths, but we're all very close. And I love that our family text threads are actually really kind of hilarious. I wouldn't
we're all over the place. In religion, out of religion, agnostic, atheist, we're all over the place. And I love it.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And so are you. So thank you, Taunia, for today.
Thank you, Cherie.
So remember, if you're waiting for someone to give you permission, well, permission granted. You are free. There are no chains on your soul. If you are in the middle of a pain point in your life, I mean, gosh, who isn't right now? But usually it's related to something where you are feeling bound or tied or not really being able to have the freedom to be yourself. And there's nothing sadder than dying and not knowing who you really are and what you're made of. So as you go into this wilderness, into this dark night of the soul, or this space you go into with the beloved, however you define that, remember, this is the life for you. This is who you are. You get to make this shine however it feels authentic for you. And people will learn through your resonance, as Taunia and I talked about. So thanks for listening. And know, again, that permission is granted. If you're waiting for someone to give you permission, if I could wave my magic wand and give that to you, I would. Remember, if you don't choose your path, someone or something will choose it for you. Have a beautiful, blessed week, and we'll talk to you next week on Women Seeking Wholeness.